Hey, this is Benjamin Boyce, and welcome to me talking about something for about 5 or 7 minutes. I want to talk about the intellectual dark web because I think it's a fascinating example of the way that human beings refer to things and just about the way that we talk about things. So there's this intellectual dark web thing that was written about a year ago in the New York Times by Barry Weiss. And the intellectual dark web, the name itself came from Eric Weinstein, the brother of Brett Weinstein. Yes, Weinstein like fine wine, not Weinstein like slime bean, but the Weinstein brothers and Brett's wife Heather and David Rubin and Joe Rogan and Sam Harris and Michael Schumer, I believe, and then a couple other people were all featured in this story. I believe that Alice Drager was interviewed for the story, but didn't want to be associated with that because she said, famously quoting some other famous quote,
I don't want to belong to any club that will accept me as a member.
The story was written and it became the talk of the town. It became something to speak about. The IDW, it was named. Now, there's different ways of criticizing the IDW. You criticize the individuals, and then you apply the criticism of any individual to the group, but then the defense of that is that the IDW supposedly is a way of interacting with one another. It's a group of people, yeah, sure, but it's really about what those people are doing. So how do you critique what those people are doing? And that's where you get a lot of messiness when people talk about the IDW, whether they like it or they dislike it. They're talking about those instances of individuals speaking, and it's always embodied in those individuals, those particular individuals speaking. Now, one of the members of the IDW, Dave Rubin, was mildly, I believe, criticized. Well, I mean, I know he was criticized. I believe he was criticized mildly by Kathy Young in a Quillette piece that came out a few days ago. And one of the criticisms that Kathy Young leveled with Dave Rubin is that Dave Rubin has interviewed people that are unseemly, right? And there's this kind of this odor or this air of guilt by association, or what has now been called guilt by adjacency. I coined that term, and Megan Daum has repeated that in one of her articles, but that came from me. Anyway, so this guilt by adjacency thing, there's really no substance to that, but it goes back to that idea of the IDW. I want to give you guys an example of the limitations of the IDW as a referent, as a way of speaking about a thing. So what is the IDW speaking about? The IDW is the same thing as the name The Avengers. What are the Avengers? Is it a group of people doing particular things or acting in a certain sort of way? Yes, it is. The Avengers are a bunch of superheroes saving the world. But when we think about the Avengers, we don't think about them saving the world. We think about Thor. We think about the Hulk. We think about Iron Man, Captain America, the Scarlet Witch, or Scarlett Johansson, or the Black Widow. Sorry, the red and the black always gets mixed up in my mind. And then the guy who shoots the arrows, and a couple of other people. Now, the Avengers, they've come to their conclusion, right? It took them 10 years or a little bit more to, tell that whole story, starting with the first Iron Man and ending with Endgame. I love that word, Endgame. It's so ripe with fruition and potency. But the Avengers are now done, and every individual Avenger is going to be swapped out while the Marvel Studio universe goes into phase 2. But when people talk about the Avengers and we think about the Avengers, it's going to be very difficult for that second round of Avengers to overcome the meaning of the Avengers. That meaning for the Avengers is very stable in our mind, and it's embodied in those different characters. Now, if we try to take the Avengers and strip it of those characters, there's nothing left. Yeah, sure, we can try to say that it's just anybody who's saving the world, but there's got to be like a certain name for those group of people that are saving the world. And so we'll see if Marvel ends up naming it something else, the Avengers 2 or the New Vengers or something like that. But the problem remains the same. The intellectual dark web, as a title, as a name, could probably only sustain at max 20 people, and probably only 5 or 6. In most people's imaginations, when they think of the IDW, they will think of, they'll be able to list probably 5 or 6 names, and then other people will be associated with them. And even if every member of the IDW that was named the IDW a year ago by Barry Weiss, or whoever named them in the IDW, even if all those people people recruited 5 or 6 more people, and those people recruited 5 or 6 more people. That IDW, that name itself, is not strong enough. It's not impersonal enough. It's not, I guess, eternal enough or it's symbolic enough to extend beyond that group, to extend basically beyond that time. And so my critique of the IDW, not as an idea, not as a mode of communication, which is kind of an interesting way of thinking about it, but that's not going to hold up in people's imagination. So my criticism goes back to it as a referent. It's stable, it's dated. And so when people speak about it, they're going to have to find new things to say about it. And it's going to have to suffer or undergo critical collapse and creative expansion. It's going to have to wiggle in order to be viable. It's going to have to change. It's going to have to be renewed. And I highly doubt that the intellectual dark web, quote unquote, is a stable enough term for something that needs to constantly be evoking and evolving and branching out and sustaining itself beyond those individuals. And some of the people in it I know personally, and I highly, highly respect. And I don't mean any of this as a personal criticism of anybody. I guess I was a little critical of Rubin, for better or worse, but the IDW as a name is automatically not only going to be thought of when other people refer to it as a group of people like the Avengers, but those people in the IDW will behave as though it's a clan. It's going to automatically spark up certain sorts of tribal circuitry in the members within it, or adherents to it, or the people who are attacking it out of it. It's always already going to be a group of people. And so when the people individually are going to be criticized, are they going to be able to defend each other? Is that what's going to happen? They're going to all be on one another's side? Are they going to turn on one another? And is the IDW as an actual group of people going to model not just pleasant centrist discourse, but actual evolvement of one another? Now, that's going to be where I'm going to wrap up. And I'm just going to say that the IDW as a concept, as an idea, as a historical event or group of people is really fascinating to take kind of a test of the intellectual waters. And one of the things that I think should be learned from it, to reduce it into something that you can learn from, to make a lesson of it, in other words, is that a public intellectual in this day and age has to rely on a live sort of communication with the audience and with other public intellectuals. So they are not going to just be able to display one book, one authoritative book. The only thing that remains now about our intellectual heritage are these books. And then these books about the relations between the writers of the books. But there's this canon, there's this solid set of works that form it. Now, because these people are all alive and coincident right now, and because we're all being recorded in a various number different of ways, and we're all interacting with each other, and then our interactions are being replicated and viewed in real time across the globe by who knows how many potential people, but also all the people in the future, what we are going to be called upon to display as public intellectuals, if I might, use the we as me kind of being somebody who publicly intellectualizes things, we need to display adaptation. We need to display the ability to change. And in that changing, furthermore, to display integrity. And how does one change with integrity? That is the question. And I think it has to do with the ways in which we encounter criticism, that we run toward criticism, that we accept criticism. Because the more criticism we are able to bear, the more people we will be able to embrace. Because what criticism does is teach us how to adapt to other people and how to adapt other people to the task and the topic at hand. And so who's got the ability to do that is going to be severely tested, because everybody's going to be constantly needing to talk about things and doubt things and praise and disparage things. That's just the way of the world. The marketplace of ideas is not a peaceful place. And in that not peace can be displayed peace, or at least a sort of centeredness and peacefulness when one interacts with that which is upsetting to one, or which is potentially problematic. Anyways, that's all I have to say for today. I hope you guys have a good time wherever you are, insofar as you are connected to time. This is Benjamin Boyce, and here is the outro. Meow.